All right, now moving on to our first Unearthed tips and tricks, our monster. If you don't know, every week we do phenomenal monsters, great the stories and different ways you can use them for our patrons. If this tickles your dice, consider maybe becoming a patron. All right, today we're going to talk about the Aetherstone Miner. So in order to build on this CR2 monster, we're going to lose some different abilities. We're going to start with this Bandit stat block. If you're wondering why, somebody actually asked me one time why I use pre-existing monsters.
They're already made.
Because they're already made. And they're easier to balance. And on top of that, it's easier to tell you start with a stat block and make these changes than trying to feed you 20 stats.
Yep.
Anyways, so we're going to start with the Bandit Captain stat block. We're going to lose the 𝗕𝗂𝗃, Parry, and we're going to swap Dex and Strength, right?
Yep.
Then we're going to give it the proficiency in the Persuasion skill, Dark Vision, and Devil's Sight. If you don't know, Devil's Sight lets you see in magical darkness.
Yep.
Now, we're also going to give it Dwarven Resilience because we want it to be it's an Aetherstone Miner. It's going to be a dwarf, right?
Yep.
And so now that we did that, last week we introduced a new mechanic we've been experimenting with. We gave the Resurgence, which means when a creature takes damage equal to or greater than the Resurgence, a new effect triggers automatically, no cost for reaction, nothing.
Yep.
It's just an effect. Ian, you want to tell us about the Resurgence power that our Aetherstone Miner gets?
Absolutely. This is a Resurgence 15 power, so that means if they take 15 or more damage, this comes into play. When the Miner takes damage from a single attack greater than its threshold, its flesh becomes as hard as stone. For up to a minute, as if concentrating on a spell, the Miner has immunity to piercing, slashing from non-magical attacks that aren't adamantine. Additionally, the Miner gains vulnerability to thunder damage. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
What?
Okay. So before we get into that, we got to make some other changes here. We're gonna give it. We're gonna alter its spell. We're gonna give it spellcasting.
Yep.
Brandon, do you want to tell us about some of the spellcasting features we're gonna give it?
Spellcasting at will. It can mold earth. That's from Xanathar. It's got everything. 1 day each. It can meld into stone, shape stone, and those are the spells.
And we're gonna give it a 𝗿𝗲𝗃 weapon, which I really added additional features on top of the 1d8 damage. It's going to target when it hits a creature that's concentrating on a spell. The creature has disadvantage on the con save. Ooh, that's brutal. And we're gonna give it a really cool ability called Cutting Parry, since it's using a pick that's really curved. When a creature attacks the Miner with a melee attack, it may use its reaction to catch the weapon in the hook of its 𝗿𝗃, parrying the target while the weapon is hooked, and then the 𝗿𝗃 sinks into them. The Miner makes an attack roll on the pick. If the result is equals or is higher than the attack roll of the attacker, it deals the weapon's normal damage.
Does that mean the attack is higher than the attacker's attack or higher than their damage?
Higher than the attacker's attack roll.
Okay.
So basically you're going attack roll against attack roll, and whichever higher counters it. So this meant, and we were basically giving it a chance to attack a second time.
Yep.
If the players don't figure this out, they're going to take way more damage if they don't retreat and attack from a distance.
Now you're saying when a creature attacks the Miner, not when it hits them.
Yes.
Yes.
So if your attack is an 8,
the Miner's gonna have a higher success chance.
Okay.
So what do you guys think about this?
Well, this thing's gonna be really hard to kill, isn't it?
Yes. I want to just give a huge shout out to Andrew for totally appreciating that I gave it vulnerabilities.
Fair enough.
I love vulnerability, and there needs to be more of them. So I want to talk. I want to talk about the Resurgence Power.
Yep.
What did you guys think about that?
It reminds me of Bloodied from 4E.
Yeah.
That's exactly the inspiration, but it's based on the threshold mechanic and the boats in the book, which I think is interesting. So overall, this monster, his skin gets hard when he's fighting, making him very difficult in melee, and he can counter you with his hooked 𝗿𝗃 during melee attacks. So what would you do as player characters?
Oh, thanks, Andrew. That's gruesome.
Yeah. That's Mortal Kombat crap there.
You can't use darkness.
Ha!
It's got double sights, so that's out of the question. Thunder Wave.
Yeah, I think it was the weakness vulnerability it had, right?
Yeah, blood thunder damage.
Thunder damage. So as character players, we want to
what
try to avoid melee.
Yep. And that's assuming the players even figure all that stuff out as they fight it.
Yes, and that's the so we've been making kind of experimenting with design changes for our monsters, and something I think needs to be done more is resistances and vulnerabilities and tactics that force the players to change the way they normally do things. Because typically the barbarian is going to do what? Run in and charge and fight, right?
I rage.
But does it make sense that if you're fighting something that's going to counter parry every time you strike to decide to step back and throw javelins instead?
Potentially, yeah.
It basically it rewards that sort of tactical play versus not doing that. So I really like this. And if it sounds good to you guys, you want to check it out. We're gonna have a backstory and different ways you can use it on our Patreon, fully fleshed out, or you can just grab the stats from this.
Yeah. Okay, so you know how this thing like counter strikes every time you attack it? Well, guess what? Grapple's not an attack.
I like that.
I can picture some rules lawyer going.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
By rules lawyer, I mean me.
Well, it says when it makes a melee attack. Not, I think technically grapple is a special melee attack.
But you're not doing an attack roll, so
Yeah, replace your attack.
You're right. All right, so that's a good point. I'm gonna have to rewrite that. Thank you for that.
If you throw them, is it considered an attack?
No, I don't. I wouldn't.
That's shoving.
I think they're talking about melee weapon attack, and he's not using a weapon anyway, so it wouldn't matter. Which I think is still appropriate. So maybe I won't change.